So you can become a front-end programmer, a back-end programmer, a full-stack programmer. Which one should you choose? So first, I recorded in 2021, and in 2021, I can tell you that it's becoming more complicated to be a front-end programmer than a back-end programmer. I know some people won't disagree, but let me explain. When you're a front-end programmer, you need to consume APIs. You need to make sure that they look good on different devices of different sizes, resolutions, etc. And it's a lot of work. Whereas when you're a backend programmer, it's not always simple, but you simply have to provide data to allow people to make CRUD, create, read, update, delete, to authenticate, to create new user accounts, etc. And these are things that will happen on an environment that you have an absolute control on. For example, you know that you will have to create an app that will be run on a Linux box. For example, we're using a Node, maybe a Node.js of a specific version. I mean, everything is under your control, but when you are a front-end programmer, you have many things that can happen and that you will have to fix. Namely, you may have tested your app with Chrome and Firefox, but you still have people using Internet Explorer. Or maybe you will notice that your app works properly on an Android device, but not on an Apple device. There are many cases like that can be really time consuming. And I think I'm not exaggerating when I say that it takes 3 more times to implement a functionality on the front end than it takes to create it on the back end. So keep that in mind. When you're a front-end programmer, you have to study much more libraries and frameworks. Whereas as a back-end programmer, usually you're specialized, for example, in Node or in ASP.NET or ASP Core, etc. So you see, you can focus on a niche, and as you spend much more time on this niche, you can become much quickly better or simply become more expert in a specific technology, rather than in front-end, you tend to go from, let's say, from React to Vue, then you will want to test Svelte, and then there will be something new like Lit. It's a framework based on web components. So you tend to become like a mad dog who tries to catch every ball that it's thrown at him. And it's really hard to resist the temptation to try this new framework. Whereas in backend programming, you tend to focus on the technology you know and like. The income is often slightly better in backend programming. So if money is your primary motivation, maybe backend programming is more appropriate for you. And last but not least, often a backend technology remains in demand for a much longer period of time than a front-end technology. For example, 10 years ago, Node.js started being in demand. Now in 2021, it's extremely in demand. So you see, during 10 years, a guy who started Node.js 10 years ago, he can now still be making good money, find missions or jobs very easily. Whereas 10 years ago, remember, in front-end programming, maybe you were developing using jQuery. Who uses jQuery nowadays? You were using maybe AngularJS, which is really different from Angular without the JS. You were using maybe Backbone. So front-end programming is more difficult, as I told you before, because you have to test your app on many devices, on many browsers, etc. And the frameworks tend to become much less in demand, much more quickly with front-end programming. If you start now studying Deno in 2021, you know that it will end up replacing Node, maybe not in 2020, maybe not in 2022, but it may be in 2023 or 2024. So you know that if you start now Deno, you will be able to capitalize on it for much longer than with a front-end library. So who should choose front-end libraries? Simply people who like to see interesting visual effects. Let's call this like that. Meaning that if you like seeing an interesting result, something that is nice, something that is engaging visually, you might be much more attracted to front-end programming. As you know, your customers and the users of your app don't really care about what is happening behind the scenes, what server is used. The users of your app don't really care about which database is used to save their data or which server is used. They don't care. What they're only interested in is the app that often is displayed on their smartphone, on a device. The other reason to choose front-end programming is if you are really imaginative. So if you have app IDs, let's say mobile app IDs, so what really matters is not what you will use. Will you use Firebase to save your data, or will you use Netlify? So if you have lots of ideas, front-end programming is probably better for you. Also, if you like to create beautiful things, if you like to play with fonts, if you like to play with colors and try to make them match with one another, I would say if you're 50% programmer, 50% artist, front-end programming is definitely for you. And last, so who should become full-stack programmers? So if you like stacks that are provided by technologies like Meteor, with Meteor.js, it's extremely easy to generate a stack that already provides a backend, Node, a database, MongoDB very often, and then you can pick a front-end library or framework like Angular, React, Vue, Svelte. So it's not that hard to go from front-end programming to full-stack programming if you use Meteor.js or Netlify or Firebase. So again, if you're a front-end programmer who doesn't want to spend too much time on the backend, nowadays, in 2021, 2022, you have a lot of solutions that didn't exist, let's say 4 or 5 years ago. So what are you interested in? Do you want to become or to keep going on front-end programming, back-end programming, or full-stack programming? Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.